Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to do some research on the old power of AI and find out what people are asking and the concerns people are having for the 2025 year coming. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about 8 subjects about Vietnam, give you my insights on them, give you the preparation that you need when you do come out here. So without further ado, let's get into the biggest one right now, the job market itself. So when it comes to Vietnam in the job market, you obviously have the teaching. This is a big part of Vietnam is coming out here to teach English. So we always have that option. However, the teaching side of it is being reduced. We've talked about this a lot. The rules have changed where English is no longer a requirement for these kids, and it's starting to drastically affect a lot of schools. I got to see a couple examples yesterday going to 3 different centers. 2 of these centers actually were starting to condense their classes into one and removing teachers. The reason for the condensing was they just didn't have enough students per class. We're talking like 3 to 5 kids a class sometimes, 5 to 7 kids a class. They want at least 15, 16, up to 20, 25 kids a class. My recommendation for that, check out my eBooks. Join the membership group. Ask questions. I can get you in here on the right foot. I can get you ahead of all these teachers. I work with these teachers. I work with these schools, so I know what they're doing. In general, have your TEFL. You need a degree out here. There is no teacher can teach without a degree in Vietnam. It doesn't exist. And I saw this on a couple legal videos. These are real lawyers in Vietnam. And they said there's ways to get around that law. Why a lawyer is allowed to practice law in Vietnam are telling foreigners to come to their country to do illegal things. So you have to have a degree, you have to have a TEFL. Check the link below. I offer the TEFL online. Get it done over the weekend. It meets that 120-hour classroom hour certification that you require to get a job. It's all in there. It's all covered. It's discounted. Now, when it comes to Westerners coming out here to open businesses, this is coming up a lot. I actually did a podcast recently where this was asked as well. I started getting into it, and then I got interrupted, and the subject got changed. When it comes to bringing in a company out here, now there's 2 levels of it. You obviously have the corporation level. You have Nike, you have Adidas, and all these companies. I'm pretty sure 100% of you guys watch this video are not trying to open a company in Vietnam at that scale. The ones that are coming out here to open it on a lower scale, you have opportunities. The old thing to do was open an English center. This is what I tried to explain before. Most people come out here to try to open a school. Why not? You're out here, you're teaching, you see the problems within the system. You see the students suffering. You just see all these problems. You're like, I can fix it. I was in the same boat as you guys were, if you're thinking about this. Those are the typical levels. And then the other one is like Vung Dao, Fonti, and stuff like that. Like Westerners will get married to Vietnamese and just open a bar. Great idea too. I think that's the better option. If you are going to open one of these, you typically have to have some kind of money. You have to have a Vietnamese partner. If you're opening an English center, your partner has to have an English degree issued by a Vietnamese university. It's a requirement. If you're opening a bar, there's no main requirements. You just have to have an investment amount. All this stuff I'm telling you is just what I know because I've done it. Definitely talk to lawyers out here. Now, the negatives with the job market, I want to bring this up because this keeps coming up a lot. And it's almost a clickbait title. You see these Black in Vietnam. You see these non-native Indian discrimination against everybody. I keep talking about this, and nobody seems to catch the flags that I'm trying to get to you guys without being too direct, so YouTube doesn't flip out. Vietnam's not a racist nation. Understand, Vietnam's history deals with the French, the Russians, and China. So this is pretty much their history. Places like America, UK, and these Western nations, we deal with all nations around the world. So there's a history. We have a history with Africa. We have a history with the EU. We have a history with South America as an American. So we get a little of everything. We understand when we see different races that there's an idea of why. In Vietnam, they don't have that. So you're going to typically see this like marginal thing going on where it's like Vietnamese won't hire Black. That's not the case. Now, the reason for that, because it does to an extent happen, and it's typically the parents that have this bias, it's not the school directly, is there's no history with Africa in a lot of these like regions. Typically, when a Vietnamese thinks of English, they think of Europeans. I had personally been passed up on jobs because I wasn't European. I remember this is it's like 4 or 5 years ago, but there's a bunch of us, Australians, South Africans, yeah. What happened? Like, was our interview bad? Was the demo lesson bad? What's up? They're like, oh, they're from Europe, so their English is better than yours. Americans' English apparently wasn't good enough. Australians' English wasn't good enough compared to you. So there is this idea. It's just, that's all it is. Now, when it comes to the skin color and stuff like that, in Vietnamese Chinese culture, the darker you are, the more poor you are, because you're technically a farmer. This is old Vietnam history, old Chinese history. It's about a status level. It's a cultural thing. It has nothing to do with, oh, he's black, oh, he's a Spanish dark guy. Like, that's not the direct attack. It's not at all. And again, I got passed up on jobs as an American because my English wasn't good enough compared to an EU. And we spoke the same. Like, I don't even know what the European guy said sometimes. He kept talking about a lorry. Who the hell is lorry? So the next one is traffic driving in Vietnam. The good things about driving in Vietnam is you have Grab. It's like Uber, pretty much. Use them. Don't go to taxis and flag them down. Be like, oh, I'm going to grab this taxi. Don't do that. Just don't do it. You'll get scammed 95% of the time. People try to say, no, if you get this one and look at the meter and you do this or you go here, just use Grab. Don't flag down any taxis. When you get out of the airport in Hanoi, Saigon, Da Nang, walk outside. It's not even 500 meters. Walk outside to the main road and use Grab. And just get a Grab. And you will save yourself literally $5 to $20. If you're getting a car, you could save up to $20, $30. To take a car from Hanoi to the city center, or the Hanoi airport city center, could run you like $60, $70 if you just jump in a taxi. If you use Grab, it can run you about $25. But with Hanoi, there's a shuttle that takes you directly to the city center. So you take the shuttle to the city center, and then you take a taxi. Now you're down to like $5. The bad things about traffic, it's very chaotic. There's no rules. I saw a lot of backpackers talking about, well, you do this and that. Like there's a system to it. Vietnamese have a system to what they do. They honk at this certain point. They do this and no. There is no system. People out here driving are mentally broken. They drive, they honk. We have something that we call like poppers, where they just like the main highway, and then you have these small alleys that come out to the highway, right? They'll just fly out there. They won't look. And they'll typically be on their phone like this, driving, just come out. That's it. Or they'll honk, expect everyone to stop for them. There's no rules to the game out here, right? So the driving out here is it's ridiculous. Vietnam, I want to say some of the dumbest driving in the world. I know places like Mexico, some places in like the Middle East. I've seen parts of Africa where it's pretty bad. China's kind of bad. India's like clustered. But there's some kind of like rules to the game, if that makes sense. When it comes to Vietnam, they just don't care. Like they are literally ridiculous. Like you'll see people just stopping on the highway to start like changing a YouTube video. I've actually been in accidents, avoided accidents where people have stopped on the highway to do a U-turn. They stopped on an actual highway where the speed limit is 120 to 150 kilometers per hour, stopped to back up and do a U-turn and then drive. And they put their hazard lights on thinking, oh, that'll just like make everything okay. When you're coming around a blind corner doing, for you Americans, doing 70 to 8, like 50 to 70 miles per hour, you can't stop. And the accidents happen. We were on a bus. It was like a van that was going, and we literally the bus almost flipped over because of this. And this lady or guy or whatever was literally backing up on the highway, backing up in the middle too. This wasn't on the corner or like, the emergency lanes. It was in the middle of the lane. So the driving out here is some of the dumbest I've ever seen. I don't understand how for 30 years there's been cars in this country, 40 to 45 years if you count trucks, and there's still the IQ of a mentally broken frog. Driving out here is so stupid. It's horrible. And if you're a Westerner out here driving with a motorbike or a car, and you do drive correctly, like you should, like Thailand or Singapore or the Western nations, or even in Cambodia, drives smarter than these people. If you drive like that, you will most likely put your life in danger because nobody cares. And if you're driving correctly, you're kind of in people's way. You don't slow down to merge. You don't use your blinker to cut to a lane. You don't get in the left lane to take a left U-turn. You stay in the right. You just cut everybody off while you're honking at them in high beam or doing this out your window. Like, the driving out here is so ridiculous. I can go on this for an hour. But what it means for that, though, is it's pretty bad. Now, if you do drive out here, get a motorbike. If you get a car, there's so many costs. Like, having a car in Vietnam is expensive. If you buy a car, it's between 50 to 100% tax. I mean, you heard me correctly. 50 to 100% actual tax to buy the car. When you get on highways, you're typically paying $5 to $15 per toll. The tolls switch per city. So if you're driving from Phan Thiet to Saigon, you're going to pay 6 or 7 different tolls. So you're going to pay like right about $35 to $47 to drive your car from Saigon to Phan Thiet, the beach city. If you take a sleeper bus or van, it costs you like $8. So if you need a car in Vietnam, rent it as you need it. Don't buy it. Another problem with cars is the roads are really small. The infrastructure in Vietnam is poor, like poorly built. It hasn't been upgraded really. Saigon is better for a car because there's more larger roads, there's more overpasses and stuff. But if you are driving a car, expect a 10-minute drive to take an hour, no matter what time of the day it is, unless it's 2 a.m., I guess. When it comes to like foreigners and accents, this was actually a big one. A lot of people said be careful, follow these kind of different types of hacks and tools. There's nothing to really do. If you get hit by a Vietnamese person, they're just going to take off. They're going to look at you and be like this. But they're typically going to take off. If the police get involved, they're going to demand bribe money from you and say the Vietnamese is okay. They're going to make up something like, "Where is your license?" If you don't have a Vietnamese license, you have your normal one. Get an international one. You can get them online. 10-year one costs like $100. It'll last for 10 years. If you're going to buy anything for yourself, just get a motorbike. If you're going to stay here for a couple of years, get new. That's probably your best bet. If you're going to stay here for like a year, maybe a year and a half, kind of a thing, just buy a used one. It costs you about $400 to $500. I've seen them as low as $200. A brand new bike will run you like $1,000 to $1,200, sometimes $1,800 for like the really high end ones. Weather in Vietnam is very different. The north in Hanoi area and all that stuff, you have seasons. You have rainy, you have hot season, but you kind of have like a fall and autumn almost. You also have snow. Places like Stapa, I was out there in 2019, is snow. The center area is kind of a mix of both, but you also have a higher risk of like typhoons and stuff like that. So those typhoons that keep hitting Vietnam, the center area gets it a little more, unfortunately, and then it kind of swoops its way down to the south. This last typhoon that we had, it hit the north the least, but it did a lot of damage to the north. The central got smashed around. I think it was like Hoi Dang or Dang Hoi. I forget the name of the city. A friend of mine lives out there. It's a government town, and he said the whole like main beachfront area was just like moved over 200 meters. Like it just got moved like horribly. And South Vietnam, like Phan Thiet, I showed you guys videos about a friend of mine that was at a resort out there, and it just got lifted up. When it comes to like, if you're here on vacation, I recommend the South. It's more tropical weather. The South Vietnam, even during the wintertime, is pretty warm. So you have that. The negatives, though, I would say Hanoi's again has seasons. So if you're living out here, it's not a big deal. If you're a tourist, you don't want to come out here during the wintertime. It's cold, but not that cold. But still, you don't want to travel to a foreign country and you're rained out all the time. But that's really it. There's nothing bad. The north is seasons. The central is kind of more hotter, and the south is pretty much your Hawaii climate. And then the next one is culture difference. The culture difference from Vietnam to the west is pretty drastic. A lot of Vietnamese try to fit in. They try to act Western. I know this sounds horrible, but Vietnamese try very hard to do Western things. Like they get their pet dogs, they buy a microwave, and they try to do like walk at the park Western. Like they do a lot of Western stuff. They'll get a dog and they'll move into like a small condo and the dog destroys everything, barks all the time. You can't sleep. When you talk to them about it, they're like, "Dogs bark, what's your problem?" I'm like, "Bro, this is a small condo. Everyone hears it." And they're like, "Dogs bark." Like they're not considerate when they do like Western stuff. You definitely see as a Hanoi, like a lot of people they try to do more Western stuff, but they're not considerate that their big ego boosted attitudes are affecting other people and they just keep doing it, which is a little frustrating. When it comes to the South, it's definitely way more westernized, which I think is a cool thing for you guys. And I've talked about this in other videos. If you're going to move to Vietnam long term and you're from the West, I strongly suggest starting in Saigon. It's easier to adapt to, is the reason. If you directly go to Hanoi, you're going to be in this like Chinese Vietnamese culture that is going to be 100% new to you. If you start off in Saigon, Da Nang even, you're going to have a mix of Vietnamese and Western. So you can slowly adapt it in, and then once you move to the north, it'll be less to adapt to. The language barrier and stuff like that is usually an issue. English in Vietnam is quite bad. It's actually horrible. Every Vietnamese speaks the same 3 sentences, knows the same 12 words. And they just ask if you answer. Most 95% of these kids don't even, or even adults, they don't know what you said when you like, "Hey, how are you doing?" "I'm all right." They don't know what that means. They only know, "I'm fine," and you. So the language barrier is kind of weird. I point when I first got here, like I had issues because I spoke American Vietnamese. Just point. That's typically the best way to go. If you are going to come out here long term and you want to learn Vietnamese, I strongly recommend using Pimsleurs. Also, just learn stuff about the market. What would you do at a market? Learn that vocabulary, and it will go a long way, and you'll start expanding just by using it. When it comes to that language, though, let me kind of address that. The South Vietnamese it's a lazy version of it. A lot of the sounds are cut off. So it's almost like it's lazy. Kind of think of this. You have European English. This is the Queen's English, right? The British English. This is the most proper of Englishes. The American version of that is more slangy. It's more casual. It's more loose with the letters, right? Think of Hanoi as like the British version of Vietnamese. And think of Saigon as the American version of Vietnamese. It's much easier to learn the South than it is the North, per se. But if you do learn the North, it's easier to learn the South as well, if that makes sense. Learning South to North it is a bit trickier because you have to learn the full sounds of a word. Plus, a lot of the words change meaning based off sound. And Central Vietnam, they don't even speak Vietnamese. Like, what are they saying? Keep that in mind. If you're going to learn Central Vietnamese, it's because you're going to be there. Don't learn it just for fun. Don't learn it because, oh, I'm going to Vietnam. I'm going to learn Central Vietnam. No, just learn. If you were to come here, you don't know what to learn. I would say learn South, honestly, because it'll go a long way. In the North, they'll understand you. Central, they'll understand you better than the Northern version of it. And in South Vietnam, obviously, they'll understand you. So I think that does it for today. I'm just going to knock out 4. Tomorrow, we're going to do another 4. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about some of the comforts, infrastructures. We're going to talk about healthcare. This one actually comes up a lot. A lot of the social changing. So Vietnam's really starting to merge into a Western culture, on the culture dynamic. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, the locals. There's a lot of misconception of local Vietnamese people. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Check out the other videos. If you want to be a teacher, check out some of these videos up here. If you need a TEFL, if you need to know what to do to be a teacher, or if you're a teacher out here already and you feel the crunch of the school starting to put pressure on you, check out the ebooks. They're cheap as hell. They will change the way you work and they'll help you keep that job. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to get out. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Till then, I will see you again.